Hey guys, welcome to Reporter Room. It's great to see you guys today. Today we're going to be talking about the Delphi case and the Moscow murder case. I also have an update for you on the Quentin Simon case. So let's get started. I want to thank my mod, Six Sense Amelia's here. Hi Amelia, thank you so much. I really appreciate your being here today. I'd also like to thank our executive producers, Energy Shots and Joy Cowley, and our channel members. I'd also like to thank our awesome subscribers. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a channel. I'm really grateful for each and every one of you. And today we're going to be talking about the Moscow murder case, because we have updates on that. The Delphi case of Richard Allen, we have updates on that, but we're going to start with a Quentin Simon update really quick because I just want to make sure that before we get into today's topic that you guys know what's going on. So with Quentin Simon, law enforcement has confirmed that what they found, who they found in the landfill, and I'm watching my words here, is Quentin Simon. The laboratory division did do a DNA analysis and was able to identify what they found, and who they found in the landfill is little Quentin. Most of you are already aware that the Chatham County authorities have charged Leilani Simon with a whole host of offenses, including murder. And a lot of people are wondering if we're going to have a death penalty case. And I would say that, that probably is going to be on the table just because of the way that she handled everything. Maybe they'll allow her to plead it down. But again, Leilani deserves her day in court because everybody is innocent until proven guilty. So let's get started. Who do we have in here? We have Lizardo the Great, Mary Jane, Daylight Disinfectant, Charlotte Lovato, Find Summer's Truth, Anna D, and Amelia. I just want to thank all of you guys for being here with me today. So let's get started. You guys know I don't like to mess around.
In plain sight.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Hello, Reporter Room investigators. I have updates for you today on Richard Allen in the Delphi murder case. Richard Allen was brought into court on Tuesday. He was shackled at his wrists and also at his ankles, and he was wearing a yellow prison jumpsuit. Now, this is the first time that the families of Abby and Libby had an opportunity to see Richard Allen since they learned that he has been charged with doing away with Abby and Libby. And many people are wondering what was going through their mind as they watched him being led into court. The prosecutor told the judge that they do not want the records unsealed because, quote, they believe Richard Allen is not the only actor in this, end quote. This is huge. So that is really huge, because what we're learning is that Richard Allen, according to prosecutors, did not act alone. They do think that there was somebody else involved. And the other thing that we learned is that it appears that he also, besides not acting alone, it appears that he also, that there were other, quote, juveniles, end quote, involved in this. So Richard Allen's attorneys were in court today seeking a new location for his trial, which is going to start next year. His lawyers were arguing that it would be difficult for an impartial jury at the current location in Chatham County because they just thought it would be hard to find an impartial jury in the county. So they asked the judge if they could move Richard Allen's trial to at least 150 miles from Carroll County, where Delphi is located. And the two lawyers for Richard Allen are Brad Rossi and Andrew Baldwin. Those are his defense lawyers. If you guys recall, he wrote a letter requesting public defenders, and he got two. So, like they stated, that the lawyers felt that moving further from the county, which I guess only has around 3,000 people, will just decrease the likelihood of any kind of jury interference or jury bias, and also increase Richard's opportunity to have a fair trial. His attorneys also stated that just moving the venue 150 miles would help their client get a fair trial. They pointed out that both social media and mainstream media had increased, that a lot of people are following this case. And of course, we are here too at Reporter Room. And therefore, that also reduced his chances of getting a fair trial. So we know that in the small town where Richard Allen lived, he was known in his community, right? He was the local CVS pharmacy tech. So the judge, we have a new judge, Judge Gall, and she, her spokesman said that the judge was not going to comment on the ongoing case, and she had not set a hearing in motion to move the trial yet. So I will absolutely bring you that information as we get it. So before we talk a little bit more about that case, and we're going to be talking about the Idaho 4 also, I want to talk to you about the number 13, because what happened to Libby and Abby happened on the 13th, and what happened to the Idaho 4 happened on the 13th, and what happened to Elizabeth and Lyric also happened on the 13th day of the month. So does this day have some significance for people? And just a little bit of trivia, the number 13, according to the King James Holy Bible, does have significant meaning, and they follow that number throughout Scripture. And the number 13 has always been a, quote, unlucky number, end quote. And the number 13 is the number that, according to the St. James Version, represents evil, wickedness, and everything vile that is connected to this. And it's also said that there were 12 disciples, and that Jesus made the 13th to sit at the table during the Last Supper. And that's another reason why the number 13th has a connotation. So these I'm just sharing with you, because although I don't personally believe this about the number 13, we may have, a couple of people who are, off the deep end that may think that the number 13 is significant. And is that why these things are happening on the 13th of the month? What do you guys think? Give this video a thumbs up on your way in and help me out with the YouTube algorithm. And Find Summer's Truth says, sounds connected to the possible child, seeing that another guy was charged with that previously. Right. Yeah. So, and Sixth Sense Amelia says, all caution, no mistakes. I can agree with that. Yeah, I think so too. I think that, although I don't personally have any connection to the 13th day of the month, and some people feel like it's a lucky day, it is interesting that all of these cases, that this is what they chose, was the 13th day of the month. So does this have significance to Richard Allen? Does this have significance to whoever did this in Idaho? What do you guys think? Put a 1 up if you think that the 13th day does have some kind of a connotation, and put a 2 up if you think that it could be just a coincidence. And if you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you'd be so kind as to give your thumbs up, if you want to join the top chat and have your comments up here. And Daylight Disinfectus, I don't even know if I can pronounce that. Triskaidekaphobia. There's even a name for it. And Collie Wobble says, Wasn't the Watts case on the 13th also? You know what? I don't know. That's a great question. Let me look. Let me look for you guys. Yes, August 13th. Yeah, you're right. So August 13th was also the same day that it happened to Shanann. I didn't even catch that. Good job. And thanks, Daylight Disinfectant. Um, so anyway, let's continue on, guys. Prosecutors believe that Richard Allen did not act alone. And if you haven't seen my video on Richard Allen, Keegan Kline, and Ronald Logan, along with the information on some of the potential conspiratorial nature of these acts, you will want to see this next, and I will link it for you in the description below, because I do a detailed dive into Keegan Kline, Ronald Logan, Richard Allen, and potential and known connections. So let's get back to the court hearing today, because we know that Richard Allen was asking the court to grant him bail. Now, the judge didn't rule on this yet, because there's going to be a hearing on whether or not Richard Allen can have bail in February. And I'm reminding you that Richard Allen's attorneys were recently added to the case, so the judge only received this request on Monday. This time were multiple people, thanks, wait, what? Using the Anthony Schatz account, or was this something that a lot of people, just, was it a coincidence that Richard Allen was out there that day? Because that account made contact with Libby on the 12th. The girls went to the bridge on the 13th, and then we have, Richard Allen, who we believe to be bridge guy. And again, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but did he just happen to be there? Did he know ahead of time that they were going to be there? And if so, how? And the other thing that's really interesting is Keegan Kline had all of his charges reduced. Not, quite a bit. And I don't know. I think that's really weird. But let's continue on, guys. Let's continue on. Time will allow prosecutors to give reasons why they do not want Richard Allen to have bail, and for defense attorneys to have the opportunity to prepare their reasons of why Richard Allen deserves bail. Now, the four big takeaways from Tuesday's hearing were: 1, the prosecutor stated they do not believe Richard Allen acted alone. Okay, so this is huge. Prosecutors don't think that Richard Allen acted alone. I think it's absolutely huge that they think that there's more than one person. So, my question to you guys is, do you think that they were all using this catfish account, this Anthony Schatz account, or do you think that maybe it was just a coincidence? 2, there is a petition to have the court documents unsealed. However, Libby German's grandmother wrote a letter requesting that the documents not be unsealed. And I think her request should be respected. I think that if she feels like she doesn't want to have the documents unsealed, she wants to have the best chance for her granddaughter to have justice. I think we need to honor that. What do you guys think? And I'm not sure what's in the documents, but obviously we want the court to do what's ever in the best interest to bring justice for Abby and Libby. So not only did the court get a letter from Libby's grandmother regarding keeping the documents sealed, but we're also learning that 40,000 locals also signed a petition requesting that these documents remain sealed. And I'm going to say, now that we're learning that the community that Libby and Abby came from, the community where Richard Allen was the local CVS pharmacy tech, I'm going to say that, 40,000 people would be a lot. So that means that not just in their very local town, but even in the surrounding areas, people step forward to sign this petition. That's a lot of people. So let's see. Amelia agrees. Annette said, wait a minute, the Delphi girls were, that's right, February 13th. So the 13th of the month, so we have Chris Watts, 13th of the month, Delphi, 13th of the month, Idaho 4, 13th of the month, and Elizabeth and Lyric, 13th of the month. And if you don't know who they are, I'm going to tell you in just a second. So the judge did reserve ruling on this, and hopefully we'll get a ruling on this sealing or unsealing of the documents in the next couple of days. 3. The argument was made that it was in the public's interest to unseal the documents, and prosecutors clapped back on this, saying that it was in the public's interest to get justice for Libby and Abby. 4. Richard Allen's attorneys spoke to the media, and of course, they believe that there is not direct evidence linking Richard Allen to the case. And just a reminder that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, so Richard Allen does deserve his day in court. And watching the video of Richard Allen being led into the courtroom and then being loaded into the van after his court appearance, some of the takeaways that I noticed was that there was a lot of heavy security around Richard Allen. In the video that I did earlier this week, I talked about the fact that Richard Allen was allegedly under a 24-hour security watch because predators are not popular in jail. I also shared with you the fact that I believe that Richard has been moved from where he was being initially held to a second location for his safety. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the families of Libby and Abby in a moment, so please stay with me. Everything I'm sharing with you today is my opinion, and opinions are not facts, so please don't send any negativity to anyone. Let's be kind and good to each other. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a live stream or a new video, and let's get started. So the other thing I want to talk about is that the initial judge recused himself, and we do have a new judge, and she has a history of allowing cameras. So will she allow cameras into the courtroom on this case? I sincerely hope so. I understand, the Richard Allen's wanting to have his day in court, and I'm sure his lawyers are going to push hard to keep the courtroom sealed. But I think it would be good if they did allow cameras into the courtroom. I think, people want to see what happened. We want to see the evidence. We want to know what went on. So the biggest new information that I have for you on this case is that his lawyers are arguing that it will be difficult to form an impartial jury at the current location because it will be difficult to find an impartial jury. So his lawyers are asking to move the trial at least 150 miles from the county where the Delphi, I'm watching my words, happened. And the two attorneys, who are Brad Rosso and Andrew Baldwin, didn't really specify where they wanted the trial to be moved. They just really wanted to have a fair trial for Richard Allen. And so, and then we also know that the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office, they did not respond. The New York Post, which is my source for this, said that they did put in to have a request. He did not immediately reply. It doesn't mean he won't reply. It just means that as of the time of my going live here, that he hasn't responded. And he may want to just see what he does, what he does want to say. So we're going to go on to the Idaho 4, and I did prepare a package for you guys. So let me grab that. And this case is really, really sad. 4 students were found on the second and third floor of their home. And So let's go through the updates that I have for you on this one. First of all, the vigils for the University of Idaho victims are going to be held tomorrow, which is Wednesday at the time of this recording. And law enforcement, Aaron Snell is the director of the communications for the Idaho State Police. He told Fox yesterday, quote, "We don't believe at this time that these murders are actually linked to the other two knife cases." Because we know there's two other cases that a lot of channels have been bringing up that are these all linked. He said, quote, "At this point in time, our detectives were aware of these cases and we have looked into them." And so the four victims were Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan. And the three women all lived at the house, and Ethan was dating Xana, and they were out together. And the police say that someone attacked them in their sleep on November 13th. And reporters asked the question, were they found in their beds? And the coroner said, yes, they were found in their beds. So the coroner who conducted the autopsy on these four wonderful, sweet, innocent people said that they were most likely asleep at the time and possibly even in their beds when this happened. And that some of them did appear to have tried to have fought back. And the two surviving roommates appear to have slept through this. And they didn't hear anything, and I want to show you why they wouldn't have heard anything. And the two roommates living on the ground floor, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, were spared. It's unclear why the two roommates were not harmed and if they slept through what happened. Look at the house for a second, and you can see that this portion of the house, the portion that is closest to me right here, that's on the lower floor, that's the first and second floor, that is the original house. And you can see that a second floor addition was added along with a third floor. So you can see that the two roommates who survived were sleeping on the ground floor. And there have been a lot of questions, how did people not hear them on the second and third floor? How did they not hear what was going on? Well, look at, there's entrances to the second floor and the third floor that are easily accessible. And the ground floor would have been far away. And because that was the initial way that the building was constructed, those walls were probably solid walls between the original part of the building and the addition that was added on. So it may have been very, very soundproof. And this may be why the roommates didn't hear anything at all of what was going on. But let's continue on, guys. However, if you look at the layout of the house, you will see that the first floor and the second floor are separate. The second and third floor were a later addition to the original structure. So you can see how easy it would be for somebody to access the house from the second or third floor. So it's not even like the person who entered the house, and they do think it's a person. They do think it was a lone wolf. That's what law enforcement believes. They're not ruling out that it could have been two people, but they believe it was a lone person that acted on this. You can see how easy it would be to gain access to a house with sliding glass doors. Let's back it up for a second. You can see on the second floor, look at that. It's even with the ground. It's right there at ground level. So they could have accessed right there, and the roommates would have been sleeping where you see the three men standing looking up. The roommates were sleeping down there. So if they came in toward the back of the house and then went in that way, you can see how easy it would be for an intruder to enter the house and not be heard at all. You wouldn't hear them coming in. Those sliding glass doors could have been popped open. So, law enforcement is, I don't think it was just a random, but if you look back at the cases of Ted Bundy, he was doing stuff like this back in the 70s. He was doing things like this in the 70s. And I'm watching my words here, but he went to a campus in Gainesville, Florida, and did something very similar and just went from room to room, from victim to victim, moved very, very quickly. And the other people that were in the house, it was a sorority house, did sleep through this. And if you look at this house, it's very easy for somebody to have slept through this. You have the ground floor where you have the roommates that survived were sleeping on this ground floor. And then you have the second and third floor where what happened. Yeah, words matter. That's exactly what he did. He just found something outside the house and went. So wait, what's saying that the downstairs roommates, it took 3 hours to call for help from a cell phone for the arrival of law enforcement. We don't know if these two had company that night. No, we don't know that, but I would think that if they had, law enforcement would be on that. But they were asleep. They had come home at 1 a.m. The roommates had, and they were sound asleep. So how this was found was the attacks on the students happened, law enforcement thinks, between 3 and 4 a.m. in the morning on the 13th of the month, another 13th of the month. And no suspect has been identified. We don't know what the person used. What was the weapon? We have no idea. Law enforcement hasn't revealed that yet. But they did say that they thought what happened in Idaho to the Idaho 4 was targeted, and they do not believe the cases are connected. And they said that the forensics is doing, quote, much more of a forensic analysis, end quote, in the case, which is a priority for them. And this is, again, according to the ISP, Public Information Officer, which is Aaron Snell, who I quoted with you. Aaron also said, quote, there have been scientists working 24/7 in the lab to try and get back some of the results in quick order. So while there's other cases going on, this case is a priority, and we're starting to get back some results. Snell also said, quote, while it's unclear how long it would take authorities to determine whether DNA that did belong to the victims was left at the crime scene or didn't belong to the victims was left at the crime scene, that the results will, quote, go to the detectives, end quote, when they become available. So we're not going to hear about it. Law enforcement, their detectives are going to get that DNA evidence so that they can continue to investigate this case to try to determine who entered that house. And police said that when the roommates woke up, so the roommates slept through all of this, and you can just, by looking at the layout of the house, if you see where the three guys are standing, looking up, that's where the roommates were sleeping, on the ground floor, on the first floor. So if the intruder entered on the second floor and did what they did on the second and third floor, you can see how easily the roommates would have slept through all of this. And so Brian Enton interviewed Kaylee's sister, Aliva, about law enforcement using the word, quote, targeted. And Aliva said that they, and I think she was meaning her own family, didn't know what law enforcement meant by targeted. She said the family's not being given information about what that means. But it does seem like they think that, maybe this could have been somebody who was watching. There are some big windows, could have been watching in the windows, peeking. It could have been, some kind of a creeper. It could have been somebody that saw somebody on social media and became obsessed. It could have been somebody that saw one of either the couple or the girls out and followed them home. We just don't know. So let's talk about Jack DeCour for a second. So we know that Madison, police said that Madison had also made calls to the same number. And we know that the calls were made to Jack DeCour, and it was, the first call came in at 12:26 a.m. and there were 6 more calls over 26 minutes, with the final call being at 2:52 a.m. And Aliva, and again, that is Kaylee's sister, says that Jack and Kaylee have been dating for years. And it wasn't until recently that they decided to take and she described it as an amicable break. So it doesn't sound like there was, any drama. And Aliva and Kaylee's family stand behind Jack 100% and know that he had absolutely nothing to do with this. So meanwhile, we have the students at Idaho who went home for Thanksgiving break, and some stayed, and they're nervous. They're traveling in groups. They're keeping their doors locked. They're staying inside after dark. So whoever did this to the 4 students, they're still at large. They're still on the run, and the crime scene is still active because we don't have those DNA results yet. And the 4 students that were found on the 2nd and 3rd floor of their home, the 2 that survived, that was Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen. I'm glad they were spared. I know there's been, a lot of suspicion about them, but if you look at the layout of the house, you can see why they could easily be cleared. And so I can understand why they slept through it. I guess the question that I have is, why were they left unharmed? Was it because they didn't know that whoever crept into the house didn't know there were bedrooms on the 1st level, that they were down there sleeping? Did they think that they got everybody in the house? Or is it what law enforcement said, which is that this is targeted? What do you guys think? But they arrived home, the 2 surviving roommates, after 1 a.m. And this whole case is just so wild and crazy. Words Matter says that whoever did this, let me see if I can grab that. Oh, I was too slow. Let me see if I can get it. Whoever did this had experience. So you think that this was not a first-time person? You think this was somebody that has, like Ted Bundy, has maybe acted like this before? I mean, it could be somebody that was recently let out. But it is very, very bizarre. And the Daylight Disinfectant said that the coroner spoke and answered questions. Yes, he did, or she did. The coroner did speak and answer questions about this. So Daylight thinks it was targeted. If you guys think it was targeted, please put the word targeted in the chat so I can show kind of people we're at. Old School says there has to be a ring or home camera on the street unless small woods were used to conceal. And Words Matter is speculating that someone knew something or saw something. Maybe someone was pregnant. I think we haven't heard anything about that. And I think that if that were the case, law enforcement probably would not release that to the general public. They would want to know, they would want to keep that close to the chest. But you can see how easily, and Daylight Disinfectant said whoever did this knew where the cameras were. And that's why I think maybe this could have been something that this was somebody who was watching the house, or maybe was, maybe not in their direct circle of friends, but maybe on the periphery. And maybe it could have been like a creeper type of peeper that was like, using binoculars and looking. I mean, if you look at the windows, it would have been very easy for somebody to see into that house. So let's see what you guys think. Targeted or not targeted? I'm getting targeted. Okay. I'm curious what you guys think. Please put a targeted or not targeted in the chat so I can show it. Porch light was not working. Well, I don't know. If you look at the back of the house, you can see the lights are on. Look at the little lights that are hanging from the balcony. Look at the lights that are hanging from the balcony. Those, to me, maybe I'm wrong, but those look like they're switched on. And there's also a porch light. But if everybody was in bed, it's possible that they had the lights off at that point. It could also be that they're on a timer. A lot of people keep their lights on the timer. Targeted because I believe the evidence is being withheld, left at the scene. Could be something directed at one written note. Who knows? And Words Matter thinks targeted. Find Summer's Truth says targeted. Daylight Disinfectant. Welcome, new folks. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Thanks, Daylight. I appreciate that. They went for one person and the other are collateral damage. So you think this was... So you think that they went for one person. Who do you think they were going for? What do you think happened? Let's continue on, guys. Please put your comments in the comment section below. Amelia says targeted. So let's continue on, guys. Brett. The second and third floor were a later addition to the original structure. So I can understand that somebody might be on the first floor and not hear what's going on at the back of the house on the second and the third floor. So this is Ethan, and he happened to have been out. The four were not out together. They were out in two sets of two. Xana and Ethan were out together, and he was just spending the night. He didn't actually live there. And Xana was out with him. So it's really sad. It's just really sad. Old School thinks it was targeted also. Marilyn Landis wants to know, did he take anything from the house? If something was taken from the house, like a trophy or a souvenir, law enforcement has not told us yet. And Words Matter says it's military or it's law enforcement. Not too many people know how to use. Okay. Oh, wow. So you think that it was somebody that knew what they were doing? Vigils for the University of Idaho victims will be held on Wednesday. Law enforcement said, quote, "We don't believe at this time that these murders are actually linked to the other knife murders that have occurred. At this point, our detectives were aware of these cases and we have looked into them." The victims' names were Kaylee Gongleves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapman. They were found hours after police say somebody went after them in their sleep on November the 13th. These are the two girls, and they were out separately from Ethan and Xana, so they were out on their own also. And they were caught on video getting food at a food truck, and they arrived home. So this law enforcement thinks this happened sometime between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning. Question that was asked of the coroners, were they found in their beds? And the coroner said yes. The coroner who conducted the autopsies of the four friends said that they were most likely asleep at the time of what happened and possibly in their beds, and that some of the victims probably did try to fight back. But the two surviving roommates appeared to have slept through what happened, and we don't know if they heard anything at all. The two other roommates were both female. So the house does have 6 bedrooms with 2 bedrooms on each floor, and the police say that the victims were found on the second and the third floor. So they were all found in their beds. And reporters at the news briefing last Wednesday asked the police about the possible connection between this slaying and another unsolved case of Travis Juton. Yes, to answer your question, the 2 blonde girls were together, and then Xana and Ethan were out together. And so they were out. So Kaylee and Madison are the names of the 2 girls, and then Xana and Ethan were the couple. And someone attacked them while they were sleeping on November the 13th. So yes, they were together that night. But I don't know if they were together in the same room or if they had their own room. It does look like a bigger house, doesn't it? And his wife, Jamie Lynn, in Oregon. However, law enforcement has investigated and do not believe that the 2 cases are connected. Aaron Snell said, quote, "There have been scientists working 24/7 in the lab to try and get back some of the results in quick order. So while there's other cases going on, this case is a priority, and we're starting to get back some results." Snell also said that it was unclear how long it would take authorities to determine whether... Okay, so the 2 surviving roommates were also out that night. They arrived home around 1 a.m., so they were home prior. And if you look at the house, let me see if I can get that picture of the house for y'all. If you look at the house, you can see that there, if you're just joining me, you can see that where the 3 men are standing, that is the original portion of the house. There was a first floor and a second floor. And later there was an addition to the second floor. So the portion that's on the hill that's sitting up a little bit higher, that was added on later. And that is your second floor and the third floor. And that is where the 4 were found, in that portion of the house. So you can see how the 2 roommates who were sleeping on the first floor wouldn't have heard anything, because the original structure is probably, was made very, very well. It was made to stand on its own, and then the addition was done later. So the walls were probably thicker than normally you would have inside the house. So whoever did this, you can see how easy it would be for somebody to creep in on this second floor level and pop the sliding glass door and get into the house, and how easily it would be for somebody who is sleeping on that ground level where the 3 men are standing, how easy it would be for them to not hear anything that was happening. And Occam's razor, sometimes it's the most obvious solution. Yes, that's true. So, and I'm assuming you're thinking about all the texting that was going on that night. The only thing is, I just don't want to unfairly target anybody just because they happen to have received some text messages. So I just want to be really careful with this, because I think law enforcement is being very, very careful and responsible with this too. And words matter. I really appreciate your comments. I think that they should check all the states around them to see if there is something similar that's going on. Yeah, I think so too. And Gigi wants to know if the girls were sisters or just friends. They were friends, but Brian Inton interviewed the sister. And let me go back to that for a second. So Brian Inton interviewed the sister of Kaylee, and her name is Alvia. And so, Alvia doesn't understand what law enforcement is talking about as far as this being targeted. But it sounds like law enforcement is working under the premise that maybe they didn't act alone. Maybe it was a lone wolf, but maybe this was somebody that they knew, that this was a predator that they knew. We don't know exactly what time everybody went to bed, Anna, because they're not here to tell us. But we do know that what did happen to them ultimately, and I'm watching my words here, happened between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. So all 6 roommates were at home when this happened. But if you remember with the Ted Bundy case, if any of you guys have studied that case, you would know that he did the same thing in a sorority house, and they didn't hear anything either. And this house, the way that this is set up, you can really see how easy it would be for somebody to go in on the second and third floor, and how somebody on the first floor would not hear anything at all. And on that note, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. I do have another video coming out tomorrow. If you'd be so kind as to give this a thumbs up on your way out, and I